Welcome everybody, and thank you for expressing your interest today in learning more about the Hanover Route 139 corridor study and the proposed recommendations we're about to bring to you today. This study is being managed by Bill McNulty, a principal transportation planner with the Old Colony Planning Council. My name is Paul Chenard, and I'm a senior transportation planner at the Old Colony Planning Council. So for those who may not be aware of what the Old Colony Planning Council is, or have a little limited dealings with us, I'd like to go over a little bit about what we do and who we are. So we're a government agency that leads a number of different studies in the realms of transportation planning, economic development, elder services, comprehensive local and regional planning. We're made up of 17 different communities, and they comprise all of the Old Colony Planning Council, and it stretches as far west as Easton and Stone, all the way to Plymouth. We are also the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and then we also function as a AAA, so looking out for our senior population in the region. We also manage the septic system, which helps residents in our area that participate upgrade their septic systems, and we are also an economic development district. So the next two slides are going to be our Title VI Notice of Non-Discrimination Rights and Protections to Beneficiaries. If anyone would like to know more about Title VI or have any type of complaints or would like to discuss something of that nature, they can reach out to one of the two contacts here, either at OCPC or the Title VI specialist at MassDOT. So once again, welcome to hearing more about Route 139 corridor study. Today we're going to discuss the origins of the study, the current conditions along the corridor, the project's timeline, past and current town initiatives, and then we'll roll into the recommendations for specific locations, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and the next steps that will come in the study's progress. So the genesis of the study is it's funded through the Old Colony's MPO Unified Work Program that was initiated by the community. It supplements previous corridor studies along Route 139 in Pembroke and in Abington, and then along Route 153 in its corridor studies in the towns of Norwell and 3A in Kingston. So we're kind of looking at holistically along the region and along that corridor, try to better understand how traffic is flowing. So in regards to Hanover, Route 139 spans from the Rockland Town line to Route 53. It's approximately 3.7 miles in length. It actually functions as a minor arterial according to federal functional classification. It's a state highway. It's a 2-lane roadway for a great portion of the way, but it does have 3-lane cross section in certain areas. And then the land uses you would find along the corridor are mainly low density residential, so homes, some low density highway commercial, so your standard, little strip mall or whatever, the parking in front, and then municipal town buildings and services at Hanover Center. So here's the timeline for this study. We started data collection as far back as October of 2019, and data collection continued on to the beginning of this year. At the same time in January, we started reaching out to stakeholders along the corridor and with the community and other interested parties, and just trying to understand what the issues they were experiencing along the corridor to better inform us. So as we're looking at recommendations and other aspects of the study, we had a good understanding of what people were experiencing as negatives. We had a public participation outreach session back in February, which was also aired on the local cable access. And then during the summer months around June and July, Bill McNulty, the project manager, started developing a series of potential recommendations for improvements. And then now here in August and September, he's pulling together the draft plan, which is going to be disseminated at the end of the month for review. And we're going to be discussing some of those recommendations in that study today. So once we get all that feedback back from the community, we'll incorporate those suggestions back into the plan. So here's a scope of the study and what we were looking at. So we looked at average daily traffic for 16 locations along the corridor. We conducted speed studies to see what people were traveling at. We reviewed the built environment along the corridor, so looking at signs and lines, also pavement condition, sidewalk condition. And then we also did a bunch of turning movement counts, so looking at key intersections, 10 in total, and really understanding where people are turning and moving through. So really understanding the movements through intersections. In order to understand all these different things in the scope, we had to do multiple analysis to understand that information. So for example, like intersection, we looked at delay. So how long it's taking for individuals to get through an intersection, both currently and what potential improvements might do to that. We looked at crashes, and we analyzed 5 years worth of data. We looked at intersections to see if they required signalization, and did they meet that threshold. We determined that 6 to 15% of all traffic is heavy vehicles. And then we looked at what future potential impacts might be created by changing conditions and land uses along the corridor. So now we're going to move into recommendations. So first we'll start with Route 139 at Plain Street. The short-term recommendation is to get more down into the weeds with that particular intersection and conduct a road safety audit. What a road safety audit is actually an on-site review of that intersection. So we, meaning OCPC, along with town officials, MassDOT, and other interested parties actually meet on site and have a on-the-ground review of the actual intersection, see what's really going on, basically. Understand what the conditions are there, how traffic is flowing, how people that are not in cars are interacting with the intersection, and try to understand it more holistically. The long-term strategy, based on availability we have now and other observations, is that this particular intersection would be best served by either signalization, so putting a traffic signal there, or constructing a roundabout. So, and these recommendations all come out of our understanding that there's peak level of service is quite low. So during your standard commuting times, it's really hard to get through that intersection. Has a high severity of crashes at this location, and we have analyzed that by either signalizing it or putting a roundabout. Traffic would flow much better and safely through this actual intersection. So the next intersection we're going to talk about is Route 139 at Grove Street. So like the last recommendation, the short-term recommendation is to conduct a road safety audit. So get down there, actually see what's going on. And then here too, also help improve the intersection long-term by either constructing a roundabout or signalizing it. As you can see just from this picture, Grove Street is slightly offset from the northern and southern leg of it. So that contributes to poor sight lines, a poor level of service, so a lot of congestion. And then there's also a history of severe crashes in this area, which all contribute to being a less desirable intersection to travel through. Here in Hanover Center, it's quite a complex area. As you can see, there's multiple roadways coming at different angles. There's a high level of congestion. It's not signalized, so it lends itself really to a congested area. And to remedy this, it's going to take some more long-term, higher cost improvements. So some of those things would be to actually signalize the areas along Route 139, extend Main Street to 139, but closing off portions of it just behind the church there, and extending green space, extending Silver Street to 139. So basically really just teeing up the intersections, just making them flow more predictably. And when you travel along them, it's more of a straighter line to Route 139. So just, having a more predictability in the flow of traffic. Here's a concept of what you might see if such proposed recommendations were to move forward. You would have 3 signalized intersections there, the expansion of green space behind the church. And then we're going to talk about some more corridor-wide improvement, not just about key intersections. So definitely lighting is going to be something that's going to need to be improved, because more light equals more visibility, equals safer conditions for all that would travel, not just cars, but pedestrians and bicyclists. Also looking at the signage and see if any signage currently along the corridor needs to be improved by bringing it up to the most current reflective standards. Also restriping faded lines on the roadway, upgrading signal timing and phasing where appropriate and possible, and continue to interface with drivers to promote greater safety and reduce distraction and enhance the pedestrian and bicycle realm, and also continue to implement enhanced enforcement. So getting officers out there to interact with drivers and those who use the corridor and express the need for greater safety. Greater bicycle improvements should be looked into. For example, one thing that is being talked about is maybe the expansion of the sidewalks to become like a multi-use path. So it's not just about walking, but it also gets bicyclists out of the actual roadway and puts everyone in a more safer, more predictable space. And then in other areas, look at maybe just bike lanes or sharrows where appropriately available with. So now I would like to open up questions, and we'll start with the Q&A.
Sean, Paul, if I could just before we get into Q&A, first I'd like to acknowledge the participants that are on this call today. From Senator Brady's office, Al DiGirolamo, and I believe Michael, let me just get to my attendee list here. Michael Mundbach, am I pronouncing that correct? So actually, if you can allow the panel, if you can allow the attendees to speak, I think you have that. But also, I just want to acknowledge Ann Lee, the Assistant Town Manager. So we appreciate the cooperation that we have with the town. This is a partnership, and as we go forward and looking at this for the safety of the citizens and visitors and businesses. And with that, obviously, the work that Bill McNulty has done, it's been a long few months on this, and particularly during COVID, you continued to stay vigilant on getting this study underway. So, and with that, I know that there's a number of people from MassDOT on the call as well. But let's leave this to the residents and attendees if they have any questions.
Okay, folks, if you would like to talk, you can simply raise your hand in the controls, and then we'll open it up for you to talk.
This is usually the hardest part about it. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
David, if you can just introduce yourself and then ask your question.
You go ahead, David.
My name's Dave DeCosta. I'm the state rep. You hear me?
Yes,
sir.
David.
All right,
Thank you for introducing yourself. My apologies.
So did I get you correct? You're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights in signals along that stretch?
There is the potential for it. These are just recommendations. There's no concrete like products or anything. This is what we feel. Either traffic lights or roundabouts can help improve flow through these intersections, but there is no, at this point, concrete plans to install any traffic lights or roundabout. These are just suggestions we're recommending to the town. If the town decides to move forward with these recommendations, then they would have to start the process with that.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, Paul, so
Please.
When we looked at Hanover Center, we observed a lot of queuing, and just from our background knowledge, we know that a lot of, especially on that Main Street, Silver Street approach, there tends to be a lot of backup during a peak period. So we looked at a variety of options. The one that came up that seemed to work best were a series of traffic signals and some geometric improvements to Route 139 itself. But at this point, it's very conceptual. It's just an idea that's being proposed. So right now, there's no actual plans to put any traffic signals.
Are you aware we've got $1.5 million in the bond bill to fix the area by the town hall and the library, which is the place you're talking about.
I know that the town had been looking at it. I wasn't unfamiliar with the actual number in the bond bill.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, I'm not a resident of Hanover, and I don't know if any of the selectmen are on board. I know Mrs. Lee, you said, was there. But the idea of putting a traffic signal in front of Grove Street and Plain Street, I don't think I've ever had a problem getting in and out of Plain Street. By the way, just in terms of bicycle lanes, what happens? Do you widen the road, or do you lessen the amount of space for vehicles when you put in bicycle lanes?
I mean, that would take a more in-depth engineering review and seeing what would be appropriate, because when you implement bike lanes, it's not always a one model fits all along the corridor. In some corridors it is, it just depends, because it's always context sensitive. So we'd really have to go out there and see what that might look like.
Again, I'm trying to think if I have ever seen a bicyclist along that stretch of road.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I
there
know
there may
tend
have
to
been.
travel in the early mornings to avoid the road.
Well, early mornings, perhaps on the weekend.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm on the road. I mean, I'm an early riser. I'm up and down that stretch fairly early. I don't think I've ever seen a bicyclist.
Yeah.
In any case, I just wanted to understand that. So you're talking about lights in front of Grove Street, Plain Street, and 3 in front of the town hall potentially.
Mhm.
When I spoke to the last 2 selectmen and to the town manager and to MassDOT when we sat down in the regional down at Taunton, they had spoken about perhaps putting a roundabout there. And I know within the town, there was the road to the west of the church adjacent to the ball field would be shut off, and you would have more parking there perhaps for both the ball field and the church. And then everyone would steer towards that roundabout, which presumably would be up around the area of the library, and people would close down, rather slow down in terms of getting back and forth, but it would calm traffic in that area. And that is, again, when I fenced that money on the bond bill, that's what I thought I was fencing it for.
So Representative, just first of all, thank you for joining us today and for
My
part of this
pleasure.
meeting. And secondly, the recommendations, and I'll let Bill speak to this, is in fact that these are it's an operational analysis, so it eliminates, it is a in its purity, if you will. So these. We'll get into, the next steps. We're talking about taking these recommendations, hearing from the constituency, if you will, of the area, and then submitting those recommendations to the community.
And that was one option that we looked at too, at closing off that portion of Center Street that's just to the west of the church there, and bring all the traffic down. We have, we looked at roundabouts, we looked at traffic signals, and in this presentation, we just had that one conceptual plan with the traffic signals because that was what seemed to work best in our analysis. But we by no means have has a roundabout been ruled out. It's still a very viable option.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking, I am just thinking my constituents and the number of complaints I get for people who have to sit outside Home Depot off of exit 14 and wait 30 seconds for the light to change, and then get up to the area around the bus terminal and wait another 30 seconds for the light to change for no apparent reason, and then get as far as the expressway, and then you wait another 30 seconds for the light to change again for no apparent reason. So as if in the middle of the evening, or really outside of rush hour, people would simply be slowing down, going around the roundabout. And that's the danger there, because as you realize, you've got you've got the library and the church with the church school. You've got the elementary school there. You've got the police boys clubs behind the town hall. You've got people coming in the town hall, and of course, the emergency vehicles going back and forth with the fire department. So there's a lot of congestion there potentially. And with the children, that's just a tragedy waiting to happen. So if you had the ability for people simply to slow down, which you don't always have if there's all green lights,
Right.
it might be better. Again, I'm not advocating, but when we sat down with MassDOT, they had indicated that that's their preferred solution. Typically, if possible, would be a roundabout. This is less in the way of a statement than simply a question.
Mhm.
They didn't say anything about 3 lights. They said, looking at it from their perspective, a roundabout might be the best solution. Roundabout.
Yeah, I mean, roundabouts are always the preferable option. As long as, if the footprint for the roundabout can fit and traffic flows well through there, yeah, it's much more environmentally friendly than a traffic signal. Like you said, it slows traffic down through there, makes it safer. So yeah, I mean, a roundabout would definitely be a preferable option. And part of this is still, working with MassDOT. I'll have that conversation with them as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
From the other participants, is there anybody else that would like to? I know Senator Brady, I don't know if you would like to add your comments, and if so, let me see, hold on one second. Yep. Senator, I think I have. Senator Brady, I think you're able to talk if you're able to.
Yes, thank you, Mary, and I just appreciate me getting on this meeting. I just came from another meeting to do with prostate cancer awareness with the NAACP. Both meetings are running, unfortunately, simultaneously, but I'm mainly here to listen. I know that we had had a study with the Old Colony Planning Council for a lot of these roadways and intersections, and we're talking about Hanover tonight, and it comes down to funding. And I know that there was some money put into the budget and the transportation bond bills, and there's some other fundings, but we're also trying to get more funding, and we're dependent on the federal government because of the COVID and everything else. We could be facing a $5 to $6 billion deficit because the economy has been drastically hit. So I know our federal government and our colleagues in the federal House of Representatives have put forth a $3 trillion package, but the U.S. Senate has not fully funded that yet, and we're waiting to see what happens with that. And that affects every aspect of the budget. So that's a concern. We're working with our federal government to hopefully get some funding, and we are looking at revenue sources at the state level in different sources for that. But any help that I can be, please don't hesitate to contact me. I know Mike is on this line too from my office, so you guys know how to get a hold of us. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions from anyone else or comments? Okay. That's okay. If you think of them at a later time, you can definitely email the project manager, and his contact information will be at the end of this presentation. So I'm going to move us on to the next step. So where are we going from here? So at this point, we're going to take all the feedback that we've gotten here today and the feedback we got into the future. Once we get the draft report out to our stakeholders for review and comment, and bring that feedback back into the document and update it and revise it. Once that information is brought back into the document, we'll start to finalize the document, and we're going to head it out, give it out to the town. And then The next steps after that will be to continue to coordinate with the town in MassDOT to conduct the road safety audits we had talked about with some intersections, continue to work with the town of Hanover and prioritize some long-time capital improvements. For example, Hanover Town Center, 139 at Plain Street, 139 at Route 53, and other intersections or portions along the corridor that we deem that need to be improved. And then continue the constant coordination with the town, MassDOT, to initiate, plan, and program any potential capital improvements that may need to be initiated there. So those are going to be the next steps following this presentation. And if you would like to get a hold of us and talk more about the project, or finally thought of that question that you didn't have at the moment, you can reach our project manager, Bill McNulty, at the phone numbers you see listed there, or at his email address, and we'll get right back to you with any feedback we have. So with that said, thank you for coming. If there's still any questions, please go ahead and ask, and we'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.